Hey, good afternoon and welcome to the OU webinar touching upon junior congregations grade 5 through 8. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Effy Braun and I started working in education approximately 6 years ago. I started off working at Yeshiva University for 2 years. I then went to Magen David High School for about a year and change, and then I got a job at the Ramaz Middle School as the student activities coordinator for the middle school. I then, while I was the student activities coordinator for the middle school at Ramaz, I was approached by KJ to be the youth director there. I started off in youth directing when I lived in Englewood a couple years ago. I split my youth director position with another fellow, and 1 week I was in charge, the next week he was in charge. Kesher in Englewood is a small shul, no more than about 40-50 children. So I kind of have experience in the smaller congregations, and now as the youth director at KJ, I deal with anywhere between 150 to 250 children, depending on the Shabbat and or the holiday. I wanted to touch upon many different ideas regarding junior congregation. And I'd like to start off by thanking the OU for the opportunity for doing this and giving off as much information as I possibly can to help the different synagogues and congregations around the globe is something that I greatly appreciate, and I thank the OU for giving me the opportunity to do this. Okay, regarding junior congregation in many shuls depending on the size of the shul, runs generally from 5th grade through 8th grade, depending on the size of the shul. When I was with Kesher, we started it at about 3rd grade, and I will touch upon approaching and engaging the youth in the different congregations as we continue on with this webinar. First and foremost, the thing we got to do is, as youth directors, is engage the kids and actually get the kids from home to shul. And once they're at shul, they become the responsibility of the youth director to bring them into groups and make them have a fun time. Some of the ways of getting our youth into groups are by giving kids incentives. Some of the incentives that we can give the students are the children of the community are raffles, kiddushes, activities, possible gym time if applicable, depending if the shul is affiliated with the school, depending on if there's basketball courts or whatnot. We are gearing all our efforts in junior congregation to engage our youth, to connect them to shuls, to congregations. And by doing so effectively, we need to reach out to them and to their interests and to their likes. And giving raffles either once a week or once a month, handing out raffle tickets that are pre-cut before Shabbat, a great way to engage students in that age range between 5th through 8th grade. You can either do, as I just said, you can either do a raffle once a week with smaller prizes. You can do a raffle once a month with larger prizes, depending on the youth director and what he sees fit doing. Those are one ways. Kiddushes. 5th through 8th grade love hot kiddush. It's very simple. You get them a hot kiddush and they will come. That has been what I have noticed throughout the last couple of years. If hot kiddush is not available, then getting them a regular kiddush with chips and cookies and sodas and the like, some sugar, can never hurt. Kids are always interested in that. And that is another incentive in order to bring the kid into shul and engage them properly. Other things are the activities that go on in junior congregation after tefillah, after davening. The activities should be obviously of 5th through 8th grade range. There are many, many different ways to get this information. Some of the ways to get activity information, enjoyable information and enjoyable activities that the kids would love is by visiting the OU website. They have a lot of activities to choose from, a lot of different search engines. Other things are chicken soup for the soul. the middle school, the lower school edition, depending on the size of kids, depending on the age of the kids you're trying to engage. Chicken Soup for the Soul, as I just said, chinuch.org. There's a couple websites, Jewish Trivia, there's a Bible Trivia, there's TorahTots.com, you have B'nai Akiva games. There are many, many things you can do to engage the junior congregation in order to maximize your potential and their potential of coming to shul. Another key point for junior congregation is not making the davening too long, and not making the Dvar Torahs too long, and making it just right, that the kids are not going to be fidgety and they're not going to constantly go out of the room, go to the bathroom. So we'll touch base upon that as well. Different shuls daven different ways. Some people cut some stuff out, some people cut other stuff out. As we continue, I would love for you guys to ask me questions regarding what I do, what I do not do, and what different shuls should do. But more or less, the youth director in each shul should make a executive decision as what's important for the children to daven and what's not important for the children to daven and say on Shabbat. Obviously, doing the whole entire tefillah is not a good idea, because you will be there for about an hour and a half and you will lose the kids, and they will just want to go to their parents, leave the room, hang out outside, and that is not what we are trying to accomplish. We are trying to accomplish them being part of the community, being part of something that will lead them into the future and make them leaders of the next step after junior congregation, which in most congregations is teen minyan. If the shul is large enough, junior congregation generally leads into teen minyan. Teen minyan is all run by the teens, with one or two adults supervising the children, and that is what we try in junior congregation to prepare them for. We, KJ, youth departments, youth directors generally like the students and their classmates and friends to run the tefillah. So for the things that kids under bar mitzvah can do, we allow them to do. Examples: Birkot HaShachar, Psukei Dezimra, doing Pticha, doing Glila. All of those things are ways to get the 5th and 6th graders in, and to get the 7th and 8th graders that are bar mitzvah, we get them to lane, we get them to be chazan for shacharit and for musaf. And this does get the kids interested, it does get them excited. We also have a girl generally give the Dvar Torah. That just engages the girls as well as the boys. And all in all, it does work out. It is an attractive davening. It is a nice davening. KJ usually gets between 40 to 50 children for junior congregation, depending on the Shabbat, depending if there's a bar or bat mitzvah in the community, not in the community. But that is basically the structure that we have in place for that age group. So I'm going to give you a rundown from the beginning till the end. Early drop-off is at 9:30. From 9:30 to 10 a.m., any kid who comes to shul early, we basically engage them. I have toys for them. I have games for them to play, bananagrams, apples to apples, checkers, chess, anything that interests them. If they say they want a game, I will go out that Shabbat during that week, and I'll have it for them the very next Shabbat. That's from 9:30 till about 10 o'clock. Most of the children start arriving. And from about 10 to 10:15, we have something called social time, where I ask my leaders to engage the children that come in and they're 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So in this world, they are exposed to a lot of technology. They're exposed to television and to internet. So there are a lot of ways to captivate and engage the teens once they come into shul, from the starter groups at 10 o'clock till about 10:15, 10:20, at which point we'll put the games away and we will start our tefillah, our prayer services. Like I said, depending on the shul, tefillah will run differently, depending on the shul, depending on the size of the shul, the amount of kids, who's able to do what. for the regular davening purposes, I like to say Psukei de Zimra. After Psukei de Zimra and Berkot HaTorah, I generally skip to Mizmor Shir, Baruch Sha'amar. I do a couple of the Shabbat tefillot, including Hodu. The Chazan says out loud, Hodu la Hashem ki tov, and I have the whole entire junior congregation respond, Kilo Lam Chazdo. We do that for all of Hodu. I do one or two more Shabbat Pizmonim, and then it moves on to the ones that we say during the weekday. I generally do 2 or 3 of those. Haluka Haluot Hashem Mina Shamaim is one that I like going back and forth, pasuk to pasuk between the boys and the girls. And then I like to sing Hallelujah, Hallelu El Bekodsho, Hallelu B'Kei Ozo. There are many tunes that go to that. That goes to that small pizmon, that small paragraph that we say. We then generally do Vayvarach David, and then sing Az Yashir together, followed by a change of Chazan, Ishtabach, through Torah learning, depending on the week and depending on how many children we have, will either be 3 aliyot or the whole entire parasha, depending on the length of how many students we have, as I said before. After which after the Torah reading, we will do a quick Dvar Torah for the week, ask a couple questions, give the kids raffle tickets. As the kids daven throughout this whole entire time, we're giving out raffle tickets as incentive to keep them quiet so they don't talk to their neighbors. And we follow that by a Musaf. After Musaf, we will do Kiddush, and the 5th through 8th grade will generally get, the junior congregation will generally get a hot Kiddush, depending, again, if there's a Bar Mitzvah. I then take it for the younger kids through the 1st through 4th grade. I then give them the hot Kiddush. If there are not a lot of kids in the junior congregation, the younger kids get hot Kiddush, and that's always great for them, and that always gives them reason to want to come to shul, just in case they get that hot kiddush and they see that the older kids in teen minyan and sometimes in a junior congregation, and they see that the adults after regular shul get hot kiddush. So it kind of engages the younger children as well and gives them more incentive to come to shul. One other thing that is important for junior congregation that I have found is proper communication with the parents of the children that go to junior congregation. Tell them what we want to accomplish. Tell them what the shul wants to accomplish. And this holds true for all ranges of youth department activities. You send a letter home to the 5th through 8th grade children, 4th through 8th grade children, depending on the size of the congregation. You explain to them what it is you're trying to accomplish by making the 7th and 8th graders leaders of the minyan. They are the ones doing the kiddush. They are the ones giving the dvar torahs. They are the ones being the chazan and laning. And then on the other hand, you have the 5th and 6th graders who do all the other things in davening that they are allowed to do according to halacha. And with that, you can compose a letter to the family, get them involved, and that generally gets the parent to send the child to youth groups, and the child will then be on his best behavior for many reasons, all because of all the incentives that you gave them, and because their parent obviously sent them in a youth director and or a youth leader never wants to give back a bad report about a child. And parents do ask on a weekly basis how the child is doing. I generally give a good report. If I have to discuss something with the child privately, I will do that on the side without anybody really ever knowing. Depending if I need to take it to the next level, I will do that. The youth department and junior congregation should not end on Shabbat morning. If there is availability for gym time, Shabbat afternoon, you can do open gyms on Shabbat afternoon. If you're lucky to have Bnei Akiva Shlichot in your community, you're more than welcome to use the Bnei Akiva Shlichot sniff program and engage and involve your 5th through 8th graders as well, your junior congregation as well. On a Motzei Shabbat, on a Saturday night, when Shabbat comes out early, you have open gym opportunities. Take them out to movies, bowling opportunities, roller, ice skating opportunities. So once you only once you only make the youth department work on Shabbat and Yom Tov, you might lose the children by engaging them on Saturday nights and Sundays and sometimes midweek, Hanukkah trips, Purim carnivals. And you get the 5th through 8th graders to help you out as well, and you empower them. You will see a drastic result within a couple of weeks in their response to you and the way they engage you and the program that you were trying to arrange for them. As I said before, the activities should generally be up to par with 5th through 8th grade standards. If you want to split them up because the group is too big, you're more than welcome to split them up, either boys and girls, and do an activity for the boys, do an activity for the girls, or you can split up the children based on age. Again, great resources to help you maintain and establish proper activities during youth groups. You can always find it on the OU website, chinuch.org, Torah Tots, Jewish trivia, Bible trivia, and Chicken Soup for the Soul, lower school edition or middle school edition. They have great stories that are engaging, that deal with many aspects of growing up in a modern Orthodox environment. And I highly recommend using all the resources you have possible to make your program as successful as can possibly be. Raising money for different events is also an option. Asking parents to help sponsor the different events that we just spoke about before, i.e. the bowling trip, or the movies, or ice cream party, Mishnayot learning followed by ice cream party. Any of these things, the youth director should be able to go to a parent and feel comfortable enough asking them. It is for a good cause, and it's something that I highly recommend. Once the parent has some involvement in the program, they generally speak to the other parents, and it generally attracts more and more children to come to your program, and your program is generally that much more successful the more children that come. So just to recap, touching upon the different issues, and the different ideas and the different ways to engage the children. You have an early drop-off. You address social matters with them. You can address school related issues with them. You can engage them through the various different means of technology, internet, television. These are things that the students unfortunately love to talk about during their spare time. So if a woman leader or a college lady leader will go speak to the women or the girls that are part of the junior congregation, and the men generally speak to the men, there's generally enough to talk about to engage them for 15-20 minutes and get them excited. We followed up by tefillah. Tefillah, depending on the congregation and the size of the congregation and how many kids are there, depends on the length. That is something we can discuss later on as I take some questions. We then we then have a activity that is age ranged for the students that are part of junior congregation. We then do Musaf, Kiddush, and at that time the leaders are still engaging the children to make the time that they have at shul that much more near and dear to the student's heart, to the child's heart, because at the end of the day, they're the reason why we all have jobs as youth directors. Our job is to engage them the best way we possibly can. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. And here we go. We have a couple questions. One question: in a smaller community, how do you bring out the youth? So, in smaller communities, generally, from my time at Kesher and from various different synagogues and youth directors that I've spoken to, generally the children come to shul because the parents come to shul. So half the battle is solved by the child already being at shul. Now, the dilemma that we'll have to deal with, and that we're going to deal with, is actually bringing them from shul, from inside synagogue, to come out to youth groups. As I touched upon, incentives are key. Some incentives even in the smaller congregations, and giving out the raffles, doing the raffles every Shabbat for the younger kids and for the older kids. Generally a great way to go about getting them to come to groups. And next question, are there any incentives given to the youth for coming to junior congregation? As I mentioned, there are many incentives that the students get for coming to junior congregation. We empower them, we make them leaders, we ask them to say the Dvar Torah, we give them hot kiddush, they're getting raffles, they're getting soda and candy and trips galore, so long as they come and they take part of the youth department. I'm lucky enough to have a gym, so part of my incentive is giving the kids open gym time, which is something that all kids in that age range generally absolutely love. Next question, how many leaders are present? So depending on the size of junior congregation, depending on the size of the shul, depends on how many leaders you need. The way I have it set up is I generally have anywhere between 2 to 4 college leaders in every room, as well as 2 to 4 high school leaders in every room. So between that mix of the older and the younger, it's a great way of engaging the kids. The college leaders generally are the one that takes the lead. The high school leaders follow in their footsteps and learn the ins and outs of the youth department. What tefillot do you cover? So the tefillot I cover on a basic Shabbat, I touched upon earlier on, and I will be glad to go over it again. We start by basic Berchot HaShachar. After Berchot HaShachar, we'll skip to Mizmor Shir. We'll then say a couple of the Shabbat, we'll say a couple of the Shabbat prakim of the davening. As I gave examples, Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat is one of them. Hodu LaHashem Ki Tov Ki L'Olam Chazdo. These are all paragraphs of davening that the children should know by the time they're in 5th through 8th grade. We'll do 1 or 2 other ones for Shabbat, and then we'll do 2 or 3 from the regular davening of the weekly davening. As mentioned, I love singing Hallelujah, Hallelujah B'Kodsho, Hallelujah B'Kia Uzo. There's a bunch of great songs that fit to that tune. I also like switching off between the boys and the girls by Hallelujah, Hallelujah Tashem Mina Shemaim, Hallelujah Bamromim. I generally have girls start off, then the guys, or I'll do 5th and 6th grade start off, 7th and 8th grade start off, and switch back and forth. The next question is, how do you run a junior congregation on a budget? So every shul has a budget, and every shul has to know which level of the youth department, what age range is their most important range to engage the children and to spend that money of the budget on. Generally, in my shul, I get to spend a lot of my budget for the 1st grade through the 8th grade, for the different raffles and the different prizes. Generally, I can go up to a parent if I want to do a bowling event. I generally go up to a parent and ask them if they'd like to sponsor an event, and I generally use my budget to incentivize the kids to come to groups, and that is what I spend most of my budget on, between pizza parties and bowling and open gyms and etc., etc. All of those things are stuff that I do and how I spend my money. Now, there are ways within the youth department, of course, to raise money. Some of them are lulav and etrog sales. These are some things that we can empower the kids to help raise money for the shul. Other things are Hanukkah trips, our Purim carnivals. These are all ways for youth departments to make money. KJ has different sports leagues. They have basketball leagues, football leagues. They have basketball leagues, baseball leagues, hockey leagues, and flag football leagues. And that's a profit maker for us, and we're able to take that money and reinvest it into the youth department, and that gets added onto our budget as well. So there are many ways to properly budget junior congregation. The next question I have is, how do you transition junior congregation into teen minyan? That's a very good question. So junior congregation transitioning into teen minyan is the goal of what is really what we try and accomplish. We in KJ, we have a toddler room, which is generally under 3 years old. Then we have 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old room. The 3-year-old room davens the least, then goes 4, then goes 5. Obviously, we add a couple of things every year. So the 3-year-old booklet of Tefillah has about 12 pages. The 4-year-old booklet for Tefillah has about 17 pages. The 5-year-old has about 19 pages, and then 1st through 4th grade use a regular Siddur. 5th through 8th grade also use a regular Siddur. 1st grade davens a lot. 1st through 4th grade davening is about 10 to 15 minutes shorter, sometimes 20 to 30 minutes shorter than our junior congregation Tefillah. And with that, we try, once they're in junior congregation, we try and make them the head of the pack. They are chazans, they give divrei Torah, they're the ones who lane for us, and we transition them and get them ready for teen minyan. Now the beauty for me is that I have the opportunity of emulating teen minyan for junior congregation. So once the child finishes 8th grade, he can then transition into teen minyan with knowing how to daven, how to lane, and knowing the structure of davening and the way Shabbat should take place from the start of Tefillah till the end of Tefillah. If there are any other questions, I'd be glad to answer them. You can always email the OU. Once again, we'd like to thank the OU and Penny for arranging this great and wonderful webinar. If anybody has any questions again, please feel free and email. Once again, my name is Effy Braun, the KJ Youth Director and the Ramaz Middle School Student Activities Coordinator. It was a pleasure.